you have anything right after the meeting? Or? Well, thanks for showing up when you did. We needed. Everybody ready? We have a member of the city council where we can talk about turkeys too. We could. Because she was almost late because of turkeys. There are turkeys and then there are turkeys. All righty, well now we're a minute late, so I probably better get this meeting. Mary, are you ready?
Sure.
Mr. Council Member, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Staff, are you ready? Ready. Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to open this meeting of the Moorhead Public Service Commission. I'd entertain a motion to approve the agenda.
I'll make that motion to approve the agenda as written.
May I have a second, Mary? Thank you. Got a motion and a second. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Thank you very much. Motion is approved. I'd also entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda unless anybody has anything to change before we do that.
I would like to make a motion to remove item 11 and 12 for further discussion.
Items number 11 and 12. Mary, anything?
No.
Okay.
With that change, I would approve the consent agenda.
Okay, got a motion, got a second? Sure. Sure, that sounds official. Got a motion and a second to approve the consent agenda with changes. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Thank you very much. Let's move down to customers to be heard and recognitions. I don't see any customers with us tonight. Any recognitions, Bill?
Nope.
No? Okay. Then old business. Do we have any old business to conduct? John?
Yes, a couple items here. Looking at the minutes from last meeting in item 7, Heidi responded that the agreement was supposed to be sent to either staff or legal counsel here. I just would like an update to see, had we received that, or do we have any information regarding that item that we were supposed to have received?
I checked my emails and I did not receive anything, at least from the city manager, so.
I'm going to plead a little bit of ignorance. Tell me what we had the last time I wasn't here.
Well, if you want to, I think it's fairly descriptive in the minutes if you want to take a look at. Travis, you could come up and, because Travis is the one who did the research, kind of looking back and seeing if we'd received anything.
I brought up the question as far as what the status of the agreement was. And then during that discussion, Heidi had noted that she had the understanding, and I think it was because she emailed staff while she was at the meeting, that there was something sent out to Moorhead Public Service and John on the 16th of January. And at that time, nobody had received anything from either John Bolger or I don't know who she spoke to or emailed at that time.
We're Travis Schmidt, electrical engineering manager. We're not aware either of who Heidi was looking on or what Heidi was looking at on her phone of who was supposed to be getting the email or receiving the emails. Bill, like Bill said, he had looked through his emails and hadn't found anything. John Bolger as well had nothing in his email, so nothing was received from the city manager or from John Shockley, City of Moorhead attorney. At that point, we that's kind of where it stands. So we haven't heard any more on that.
Okay. All right. Okay. I just wanted clarification. All right. Thank you. Here for it.
John, is this an element of our item number 10 today?
I think it probably will be.
Okay. All right.
Steve rose his hand.
Steve, did you have your hand up? I'm sorry.
Yeah, I guess if it's on item, is it pertaining to item number 10?
I think we'll get there on item 10.
Okay,
yes.
well then, I know that there was some in January when I was at the, I think it was the January meeting that I was sat in for Heidi. The question came up on this land thing, and we're still waiting. The city's still waiting for an opinion from the Attorney General. I mean, we could go down there and have them give us a ruling on it, but we're waiting.
Road trip. Oh, okay. So we're waiting
Dave.
basically on excuse me, okay, John?
Yes, my last communication with Attorney Shockley on that Attorney General's opinion was that he hadn't sent it in yet. I asked him to supply me a copy when he did it and said that we'd like to have the chance to have input to the Attorney General's office on those issues so that they could have all of the facts in front of them when they're making a decision or writing their opinion. And I haven't heard anything from John Shockley on that since then.
Oh, okay.
When I reviewed the packet this weekend, I asked that question, what's the status? And the answer that I received from Chris Volkers was, we are still waiting to hear back from the AG.
Sorry.
We got a couple of different places here then.
My communication with John Shockley was at least a month ago on this, but I did ask him to let me know and provide me a copy of the request for the opinion when he sent it in.
Okay.
And he said he hadn't sent it in yet, so he didn't have anything he could provide me at that time. And I'm not commenting on what may have been said by Heidi or anybody else at any time. I'm just commenting on my communication with John Shockley.
Steve, anything? You look like your hand was up. Between this meeting and the next meeting, can we get on the same page, please? I asked that a couple of meetings back.
Yeah, I will check
This
with-
can just keeps on getting kicked.
I will check with John Shockley again to find
Because I
out.
would love to have that conversation so we can really finally maybe get to the bottom of this and have an agreement and pay the bills that we're supposed to pay and have the relationship that we're supposed to have. Any problem with that, Bill?
I have no problem with that.
Okay.
I mean, it would be,
You know, can the two attorneys possibly get together in the next 14 days?
and the city manager and the general manager.
And the city manager and the general manager?
Yep.
No, I mean, I can't tell the city manager what to do, but I think we can certainly, encourage you, Bill, to push for that.
Well, it might be helpful actually to, have the president of the commission and maybe the mayor
I'm
involved
glad
in
to
that
be there
meeting
as
as well.
I'm glad to be there as well. I'm sure that Mayor Judd would welcome that. So, great. We have our marching orders. Let's do something in the next 14 days so we can come back to the meeting in a couple of weeks and tackle this.
Okay.
Anything else from members?
Yep.
John?
Also, just a reminder here, Bill, that it may be appropriate next month here in your quarterly or your annual review, we had said that we're going to have quarterly reviews as well. So that should be on the agenda for next month.
Sure. Yep, we can do that.
And we're smack in the middle of the first quarter, so timing's good.
Also here during that review, we had talked about also having the commission have more exposure to staff retreat, not retreats, but socials or cookouts or something of that sort. I don't know if anything's been scheduled at this point, but if you could look at putting that on your calendar so we know what we could look forward to. And then also here, just if you could give an update probably next month here, is that we had Tanya Strandy from Dale Carnegie do our culture work for us. I think it's been over a year now that the village has been working here, so we should have either report from village or whoever as far as the progress or what we're continuing with as far as the culture committee or whatever process we have in place now.
Yep, we can do that.
All right, that's all I have.
Okay. Mary, anything? Okay. Reports. Councilman Gertz, you're first up. Anything from council?
No report.
No reports. Okay. Business is as usual. It's nice and quiet. No turkeys today. No comment. I can't draw them out, guys. I can't do it. Public Service Commission members, anything from your activities over the last couple of weeks? Okay. Pardon the ring. Mr. General Manager.
You can see there's a lengthy general manager's report that's a written one, and in it, kind of as Commissioner Regala talked about, there's a fourth quarter 2018 strategic plan update. That's a good place to go to just to kind of see some highlights from the last quarter. And we could use that as a basis for the conversation, for the general manager's quarterly review. That's probably a good way to do that. In addition to that, there are quarterly dashboard reports. And if you get a chance, you may want to just kind of peruse those as well. There's a couple of new ones, and one of them that's new, we've been dealing with, some customer service and collection discussions lately. And it's like maybe second from the back, there's a report that talks about, all the bills that are sent out, how many first notices, second notices, and disconnections that there are. And that's a very interesting report that Mark put together. So you can take a look at that. So that's a couple things in the GM report. The other things that you may want to take a look at is there's federal legislative position papers. One talking about Western Area Power, which is a very important resource for us. And some of those will be discussed in DC in the next couple of weeks. There's also the Minnesota State Legislative position papers as well, and those are kind of just outlines some of our major issues in Minnesota for municipal utilities. Other than that, I think if there's any questions, I can answer those, but like I mentioned, there's a quite lengthy report that you may want to take a look at.
Okay, members, any comments, questions for Bill?
Aaron?
John?
Bill, in your report here, you have a notation for effective collection of city fees, that you had a couple meetings with the Minnesota Department of Commerce. And I believe the last report that you had is that the city was supposed to give us instructions or directions as far as how we are supposed to handle that, as far as either shut on or how we're going to handle collection of their part of the billing.
Right.
Have we got any instructions at this point?
I have not at this point, although Mr. Gertz may have some update on what happened on Monday night, because my understanding from City Manager Chris Volkers was that they might have been talking about that at that point. So I don't know if they did or not. Maybe they've pushed that off.
Forgive me, but I was reading some other information here, so.
I don't know if Chris Volkers was bringing anything forward as to giving us direction on how we would collect for city charges on the bills.
There was a brief update, but there was no specific, this is your direction. And I think it's one of those things that we have to work together on, and maybe to your at your point, Commissioner Anderson, that we need to strive to work more of as a cohesive unit here on some of this stuff going forward.
Yep, I think so.
And then another item here, as far as in the attachment, you had the policy regarding committees. I would like that brought back for discussion probably in next meeting, because we had talked about having the HR committee reestablished. And if we're going to have the HR committee and we're going to have that policy in place, I believe that probably has some conflict between how those are written. So we need to address probably the HR committee here, and then again the policy here as far as defines use and appointment of committee and of the commission here for it. I think there just needs some further clarification of how this is written versus what an HR committee would do.
Bill,
Right.
is the next meeting our best next opportunity for strategic planning discussion?
Well, I'll be in DC, so that we weren't going to reserve that. We were going to be talking about, what was the issue? Travis, what are we talking about at the next? Okay, we're going to have a Center Avenue discussion. So I mean, the next meeting in March, we could put it on that agenda, or
End of March, probably.
April. Now, the thing to remember, and take a look at this, at the policy, committees now in the state of Minnesota have to basically be limited in time frame and specific in their intent. If it's an ongoing committee, then it has to have an agenda and it has to be open to the public. So that's what we're trying to avoid in having an ongoing committee like our previous HR committee. So the general manager can have an HR committee where a couple of commissioners, join the general manager and then advise him. But if it's a committee of the commissions where the commission gives direction to a committee, then it has to be open to the public if it's an ongoing one. So like our budget committee is specific and it's very time oriented, it's typically just in the fall. Then you don't have to have an agenda and it doesn't have to be open to the public. So we can talk about that more maybe in March and talk about the HR committee. And if it's a general manager's committee where the commissioners come in and advise, that's fine. But that's not a commission committee where the commission directs the committee to do something.
I think it just has to be discussed because the concern I have is that the way we're structured now, employees do not have the ability to go to anybody if there is issues with management, as it was in the past. Because in the past, again, if there was grievances or whatever, and management couldn't resolve those, the employees could go to the HR committee. And now the way our structure is, they do not have that. So we need to discuss a way how we can facilitate that for our employees.
Yeah, that's a good discussion. We can take a look at that and see how we want to handle that.
Hopefully, we can have 5 members, for that discussion at the second meeting in March. So we add it to that agenda. So that we have that committee discussion.
Yep.
With the 5 of us.
Yep. Yeah, we can do
That
that.
sound good, John?
Yep.
Yeah, timely enough? Okay.
Yep.
Mary? Okay. So let's plan on that for, what is today, the 19th, so about the 19th of March?
Yep.
Okay. Good point. Bill brings up, good points as well, but not with any intent to get by with anything,
No.
I mean, open meetings and clarity and transparency is good. We're not trying to subvert anything, but operations of the committees does become a little bit more cumbersome. So we've been operating with task force type committees for the last year and a half, and that's gone fairly well. But we do. I think John's right. We do have a bit of a shortcoming here as it pertains to HR. So we'll deal with it next month. Item number 10 is to approve a request for payment to the City of Moorhead for relocation of MPS 115 volt, all that stuff, Travis. Electric transmission line and electric distribution infrastructure for the city's 20th, 21st Streets grade separation project. Let's talk about that.
Sure. So back in May of 2018, the city manager, Chris Volkers, and city engineer Bob Zimmerman attended our meeting and requested that the Moorhead Public Service Board approve basically $1.4 million worth of work for the 2021st Street grade separation project. At that meeting, the board did approve that, but they also approved 5 guiding principles, which were to be utilized in making an agreement that was crafted by John Bolger to deal with the costs of that project, both for electric and the water division, along with several other issues that were currently outstanding. Easement acquisition, control of land, special assessments, things like that. After that meeting, John crafted that. In July, we went through and reviewed it in closed session. Again, we did that as well in September. and October of 2018. After that, it kind of died off for a while. We weren't getting any communications on what was going on with that agreement. We were asking and not hearing. December 27th, John sent another letter to Attorney John Shockley. He responded on the 28th. And then again, that was version 9 of the agreement, which is the general land agreement. And then Attorney Aaron Larsgaard from John Bolger's office sent something on January 4th, getting us to version 10. At this point in time, we have not heard anything from City Council or have an agreement with them. And we've expended about $1.4 million. We're at roughly $1.324 million. And would like to send a bill to the city of Moorhead for those costs since we don't have an agreement in place with them.
That's a good summation, basically, of what
Yep.
what we were talking about earlier. And
Yep.
I don't think we have to beat this
No.
to death tonight.
No.
We need to have that conversation that we talked about in the next couple of weeks. If the commission has anything further to say, we've got the outline here. I just think we aren't going to accomplish anything by having any further recitation of the facts. Let's get on toward the next meeting, and hopefully we get something resolved here so that we don't have to keep on beating on this.
I don't know if it would help, but we had a draft of this similar land agreement done in 2012 that was sent. I don't know if we have a copy of that or any of that sort of thing. That might be, again, just good information to have in our meeting that you're going forward and saying that, this has been an ongoing process to try to get this matter resolved here. So I think it would just be a good piece to bring along to that discussion as well.
Yeah, that agreement is basically the second half of this agreement. So, I mean, it's when we dealt with the transmission line for the Opportunity Substation and, worked out some of the land agreements there.
Councilman Gertz, I was just going to call on you. Is there anything further that this staff or team can provide you in your role in preparation for this
Well,
conversation?
it's my understanding that, again, Shockley is waiting for an opinion from the Attorney General on the ownership of land.
Okay, yep.
And am I hearing that the commission is walking back the agreement that the relocation of the transmission line for the 2021st Street underpass? They're walking away from that agreement that the commission approved?
No, I don't-
Because we
No.
won't sign a global land agreement?
No, we're just waiting.
Yeah.
Okay.
We're just holding. I don't think
But
there's.
I hear what Travis saying, he's
Well,
requesting the commission approval.
we don't have an agreement.
To send an invoice to the city for that work.
Correct. So where we're at is with that agreement, Moorhead Public Service Electric Division would, basically pay the $1.4 million in costs we had associated with that project, but we don't have that agreement yet. So if we can get a signed agreement, that would be helpful so that we would pay for our portion of that project.
So maybe this is a question for Mr. Bolger. Is the general land agreement all encompassing? Is it outside of the agreement for the 2021st Street underpass? Is that why you're holding this, saying, hey, we aren't going to, we want to get paid for that until you agree on a global land ownership agreement?
No,
The
it's-
20th, 21st Street is part of this general land agreement, but the general land agreement also contains the same provisions that were brought up in 2012 and that we understood we had an agreement with the city on at that time, and to which we've received no response.
Okay, well, it's my understanding, as of Sunday night, Attorney Shockley told me they were still waiting for an opinion from the Attorney General on the land ownership thing. And so if you feel that you need to get paid for that, I'd say go ahead and send an invoice and we'll the city council will have to take that up. I thought we had an agreement that would be a shared agreement, but I guess we don't.
Yeah, that's the agreement that's in front of you, that general land agreement. And we're not getting any communication or any feedback on what's going on with it. There's been no response since we sent it.
So just help me understand, is the general land agreement using the relocation of the utilities as leverage to get a general land agreement?
It's part of it.
Okay.
Because we had to get a bunch of easements and things like that as
Okay.
part of the project, and
Thank
there's
you.
a lot of costs associated with the project, too.
Let me be clear in my understanding. We made a commitment last summer to contribute the portion to the 20th, 21st Street overpass project as our contribution as a utility to that project.
Correct.
How is this changing that commitment?
At this point, we don't have a signed agreement between the council and the commission.
Not even from our action last summer to participate in that project.
We've expended the funds
Yeah.
of roughly $1.4 million, but we have no signed agreement, helping finish out the rest of that, plus the easements, the 2012 stuff, everything else that was encompassed into that general land agreement. That was part of the 5 guiding principles.
Guiding principles that we don't have an agreement on.
Correct.
I'm tending to take the same position that I think Councilman Gertz is taking. When we made the agreement to participate in that project, I don't recall that we had a caveat in that action. And I know that this commission has been split on that question, but I don't recall, and I would need some help on that we had a stated caveat to that action, that we were going to have this land agreement as part of that.
That is probably why we need to sit down and talk about this in maybe a smaller meeting. However, I do believe that caveat was there. That's why the commission approved the 5 guiding principles that were the basis of why they were going to relocate the transmission lines, as Travis mentioned. So as Travis mentioned, there is no agreement yet, which is fulfilling what, the city, was saying that they were going to do if we were going to pay the $1.4 million worth of relocation costs. It would have been better for Moorhead Public Service to say, no, until we have a signed agreement, we're not going to do any work on 21st Street. But that wasn't realistic, and that's why Bob Zimmerman and Chris Volkers were at our meeting in May saying, please, would you relocate these lines? And we said, our interest is in getting some agreement going forward so we don't have to deal with these issues going forward. So the commission chose not to delay the relocation of those lines, but there was a caveat that we're going to approve these 5 principles, and we would like our attorney to draft an agreement of which the city should fulfill, sign, agree to, negotiate and agree upon. Otherwise, and that's where we're at today, we would like to be reimbursed for the cost of relocating that line. And that's really where we're at.
I understand that. I think we might want to review those meetings, but this land agreement's been an important discussion for years now, and I understand that. But when it came to the safety and the community participation in this project, I don't recall that we had any specific caveat when we took action to participate in that project. Now, John might remember differently. Mary wasn't here yet. And Ralph's not here yet, so I think it's an important part of what we're going to be having a conversation about over the next couple of weeks.
Well,
Steve, then John.
I guess as a city council person, I don't recall saying or hearing that this agreement really becomes a ransom, that you guys would have shut down the 21st Street project and not relocated the lines without a global agreement that goes back to 2012. I was not aware of that, and had we been, then I think we probably would have pushed this forward. But what I'm hearing you say is you would have never done the work if you wouldn't have been able to have a global land agreement. And if the Attorney General says rules that Moorhead Public Service isn't in a position to own land, then do you put the power lines back in where they were to stop the project?
It's a good question. We really wanted, at that point in time, we really wanted guidance from the commission on whether or not to move forward with this because of the costs in the project that weren't actually incorporated into the total budget for the 2021st Street grade separation project. And that's where we said that would be our contribution to the project. We'll relocate the lines at our cost. But going forward, we had a couple of other projects working with Bob Zimmerman on where there was costs that MPS paid for our linemen and our vehicle or equipment time, but they paid for the materials and the contractor work. And we were trying to get something like that sorted out for going forward, because it's a battle every time that we have to do a bigger project or MPS has to relocate lines because of a city street project.
Travis, isn't what you just said accurate, that going forward, we wanted to have this in place?
Yep.
But that we were going to participate at this level because of the importance of the project to the community?
Yeah, and it was an expenditure of funds that was a large amount, and we wanted to make sure the board was giving us the thumbs up that we could do that and then move forward with an agreement.
So did the board approve that?
The agreement?
Yeah.
They approved.
Approve the agreement or of the relocation of the lines?
They did approve the agreement.
Okay, but
with
now you
the-
want to go back on that and send the city a bill?
No, we don't want to, we want the agreement, is what we would
Because
like
it
to
says here, MPS is requesting authorization from the commission to send an invoice to the city for the cost of the relocation projects. So is that an accurate statement or not?
I'll
Bill's
answer
got-
that question. It's an accurate statement based on what we talked about earlier. And really what we're trying to do is come up with an agreement to make sure that this situation doesn't happen again. Because Moorhead Public Service has an understanding with the city that we were able to locate that transmission line in the right-of-way, and if it was going to be moved, common utility practice is, the city would pay to have the line relocated. But that's not what's happening in this case. So we have a disagreement with the city over who should pay for this. We believe that, that the city should pay to relocate this transmission line. It's in the city right away. It does not have an easement, however. If we need to have easements for all of our transmission lines in town, then tell us that so that we know going forward that we need easements and we'll acquire those so that this situation doesn't happen again. If you want to tell us that, hey, you're in the right way, the understanding that you had before doesn't pertain to this, so Moorhead Public Service, you should pay for that, then I guess we'll have to live with that. But that changes things going forward. And then we still need an agreement because the city should understand how we're going to operate going forward. Like Travis mentioned for 15th Avenue North, again, there we've got a gentleman's agreement that the city would pay to relocate our electric wires that were in the right-of-way, but not with an easement. So we're doing it differently. We're just trying to get things straight so everybody going into these projects know who's going to move what and who's going to pay for what.
Bill, I want to bring John into this. He had his hand up for a little while, and then I'd like to come back to a couple points. So, John.
Steve, that was the reason I brought it up last month, is that to bring back exactly what was approved so we know the understanding of it. My recollection that there was a commitment by the commission to participate in this project and cover the costs as a good faith gesture. But since I've been on the commission now, and since 2012, we've we have not been able to get any response from city managers. There was a group of 4 in 2012, 2 commissioners and 2 council people that put this agreement together. If that agreement would have been signed, this would be a moot question. Like here again. And now, since we approved this, it was, I guess, and maybe our error, but we had the expectation that the city management would bring this forward to council and say that we would like to have agreement of how we can go forward so we don't have these misunderstandings or question marks of how we're going to proceed. Because I believe 3 years ago we had the understanding from the city attorney that the Moorhead Public Service could own land because the city sold land to the public service. A year later, it was my understanding that he again said, no, Moorhead Public Service, you can't own land. So you sold us a year ago and hold title to it. And then Ralph had some communication with people in Minneapolis, some attorney firm that does extensive work with utilities. And they've never heard of this issue where a utility could not hold title. So that's why John wanted to share that information before John contacted the Attorney General. And that was very well explained to staff. But again, no communication back. If this has been sent to us, it would have been nice to be aware of that. But we're just not getting the response back. So unfortunately, I think the response is we're not getting anywhere. Maybe if we send a bill, there might be a reaction from management to bring it to council to kind of move forward. I think that would be, unfortunately, probably where we sit. I don't think it's any intent or desire for the council or the city to pay the utility. But it's a way to get this resolved because each year we have a different process. And we'd like to have an agreement so we're consistent. The city knows what they're going to do. The commission knows what we're going to do. And because we've had several transactions that have worked very well. But there's no consistency.
I don't disagree with having a clear policy. At the end of the day, when we talk about the relocation costs for the 2021st Street underpass, the city of Moorhead is responsible for those costs. And I believe MPS is a part of the city of Moorhead. Is that an accurate statement, John?
The city, Moorhead Public Service is a utility established by the charter of the city of Moorhead.
Okay. So it's one of the same entities, the city. It serves the residents of the city of Moorhead.
However, the commission, the Moorhead Public Service Commission, is concerned about the water and electric rates and ratepayers,
Absolutely.
not the
So
taxpayers.
If the commission takes action today and approves the authorization to send the bill, I'm presuming that's what this is on the agenda for. That's what it says you're asking for. If you take that action today and you send the bill, and the option is to, we'll put those lines back right where they were. If you don't send the bill or turn our power off, then the cost would have to be special assessed back to the residents. So either way, the residents are the ratepayers, and I know they aren't, the taxpayers and ratepayers are different. Most of them are the same people, some of them are different people. And the agreement was, I guess it was a verbal agreement that, and I guess you guys have taken action to approve that, but that doesn't necessarily mean the case today, because it was predicated on having these 5 guiding principles that I can tell you, sitting here as a city council person, I've never heard of the 5 guiding principles until I read it in this documentation. Sure. So whenever you make a deal like that, you really should have communication between the two entities that if you don't approve of this, we're not going to do this, instead of waiting till after it was done.
Correct, and the city manager was at that meeting, and so was Bob Zimmerman. They were aware of it, so they should have hopefully brought it back to the council to discuss. And we provided the agreement as well, too, for you guys to review and sign off on,
Yeah.
so.
But I'd like to return to the point that you made a little while ago, Travis, and Bill, we're just going to have to sort out the details here, but we agreed to participate in that project. And then going forward, we would really like to have this land use practice in place. I for one, won't participate in sending this bill. I haven't been pleased about the idea of sending the city a bill for that. And I won't participate in it. And I'll be a no vote, because we said that we were going to participate in this important safety project for the community. We did say then too, we wanted to get this land use and land ownership issue settled. And I've been asking for it for months as well.
Yeah.
But my intent was never, ever to try to, hold hostage or extort or whatever, whatever we want to call this, these months later, a payment for something that we said that we do as a part of a community project when we almost lost the project because of the loss of funding at various levels and so forth. Going forward, I'd like to have that conversation in the next 14 days that we talked about and get this sorted out with the city manager and the mayor and our manager and everybody else that's involved. But I'm really disappointed that we're at a point here where it looks like we're trying to do something that really just doesn't sound very honorable. I think we made a commitment. I think we ought to stand by the commitment. We ought to participate at the level that we said we would in an important community project. And then let's sort out the problems that we have with city management and utility management on land ownership. And let's move forward as opposed to stepping backward into this mud quagmire that we're describing here. It's $1.4 million. Mm-hmm. Let's just accept that as our commitment to that important project and move on. Anybody else? I could call a vote on this, Steve. We'll keep it going for as long as we can, I guess.
I just want to thank you for your comments. And I maybe to Commissioner Regala's point that goes back to 2002 or 2012. I've been on the council since 2012, and in that time we've had, 2 full-time city manager and interim city manager. So there's been some changes, and so we're going back and trying to fix a whole bunch of stuff, and it took a while to get that stuff unfixed.
It's true.
And I'm not using that as an excuse to get it fixed. I think we should get some resolution on how we're going to move forward. And I think that would be healthy for both entities. But I just want to reiterate the fact that we need to work hard at trying to be good partners.
John?
Steve, I don't know if there would have been a lot of support of actually sending the bill to the city, because I think in truth the commission and staff were going to participate with this. But I kind of feel that the reason why staff brought it up to commission is to make our representatives aware that this has been an ongoing process, and we had hoped that we would have had some resolution of it by now. And by bringing this forward, I'm thinking there would be a little bit more discussions, as David had suggested, the decision makers here to come together and get this resolved.
I think it would be a healthy meeting.
Yes.
I mean, if you go back and this whole transfer issue, how it used to be a contentious thing. And, the commission and the city council come together to forge an agreement that's been healthy for both sides.
Right.
And so we've done it already. We've set precedent that it can be done. We just need to work towards this issue. So duly noted.
All right. Okay.
I'd entertain a motion to table this thing if anybody wants to make it.
Do we want to table or not approve?
Well, we could not approve. That would set it aside, and I'd be happy with that too, because that's the way I'd vote. But, you know, it's up to you two to make a motion in a second. And I'll be glad to entertain whatever it is that you'd like to do.
I would make a motion at this time that we do not approve this recommendation at this time. And we would then, if necessary, bring it back after the designated group decides how to move forward with the land agreement.
I would second that.
We have a motion and a second. Cheryl, did you get all that? You're good?
I think so.
Okay. Any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
The motion is to not approve. Right. Okay, so all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. The motion is approved. Item number 11 is to approve specifications and authorize advertisement for bids for roof replacement at MPS Dispatch and Operations Center. John, you asked that we bring this back?
It's probably discussion here, but as I look at this, the bid is for $350,000 potentially, and I'm just have a little issue with it being on a consent agenda for that amount. Sure. I understand the need for it and the details here, but at this point, if we have a consent agenda, we aren't going to see any future bids or everything like that. It's just going to be a done deal here. And
No.
my kind of thought is that we, as a commission, should be really looking at expenditures of this amount of money, other than a consent agenda. Right.
Travis Schmidt, Electrical Engineering Manager. This is actually just the authorization of the specifications and advertisement for bid. So we'll actually be coming back to you and to the City Council because this is over $175,000 for award, which will be on March 19th, if I'm correct. So this is just to advertise for the bid for the roof replacement out at the Moorhead Operations Center, or Dispatch and Operations Center. So
Thank you for the clarification. That was not my understanding in reading it. It was for approval of it. So thank you
Yeah.
for the Travis. for
yeah,
that.
we just normally these go on consent because it's just for the advertisement of it. And then once we award it, or we go through the bidding process and open bids, and then we'll award it based off of a recommendation from YHR, who's the architect on this one. And then we'll bring it back to you for awarding the actual bid itself.
Okay.
And then you'll sign the contracts at that point in time.
All right. Good.
So-
Okay.
So you're okay with moving
Based-
forward with
I
approval?
recommend approval.
Okay, I got a motion to approve, second? Second. Got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. Item number 12 is to award bids for the 2019 water treatment and wastewater treatment chemicals. Chris?
Again, just for again, the same thought with the amount of the dollar amount, but more specifically here, John, you might address this, is that there's a comment that the award or the winning bid was done by a coin flip.
Yeah, I can discuss
Can you clarify that?
I did see that coin flip, yeah.
Yeah. First off, I'll just provide a little background on the scope of the item. This is for our annual chemical utilization. So we use about $1.1 million worth of water treatment chemicals per year for water treatment. Interestingly, for the first time that I'm aware of, we had a tie bid for one of the bid items. Bid item number 2 for soda ash was a tie bid, and I'd never encountered that situation before. I had heard that other entities had done a coin flip to resolve that issue. John looked into it from a legal perspective and verified that Minnesota state law doesn't really provide much guidance for how to resolve a tie bid situation. But based on the precedent that we had and then the consent from the respective bidding parties, we proceeded with a coin flip to resolve that particular tie. So it was just a tie on one of the unit bid price items, but an important one nonetheless, as the contract was $349,000 roughly.
John, Chris got a hold of me. I researched Minnesota law. There was nothing on point. There was something about what school districts could do in certain situations. I contacted the League of Minnesota Cities. They could provide no guidance. I looked at laws of other states. Some other states had specific statutes that would authorize something like a coin toss to do it. So I told Chris that if both of the participants would agree in writing that that would be an acceptable way to resolve it, that let's go ahead and do it. And so that's what we did.
Okay. Just so that the two parties that we received these matching bids on, we didn't have any previous experience with or working relationship with them?
Well, DuBois, so the two companies in question, DuBois Chemicals and Thatcher Company, DuBois had supplied it to us, I believe, for the last 5 or 6 years. As a different, operating as a different company. They were recently purchased and rebranded as DuBois Chemicals, so we only have probably 4 to 5 months experience, maybe, I'm not sure on the 4 months, but roughly 4 months experience working with DuBois Chemical. But the predecessor to DuBois, probably 5 to 6 years of experience with those folks.
Okay, thank you.
If I might add, there was no way to differentiate and say one was a qualified bidder and the other one wasn't. So we eliminated that at the beginning.
I just found it interesting.
Any further discussion?
Well, if you want to watch the coin flip, it is on our YouTube channel. So if you go to YouTube and go to Moorhead Public Service, you can watch it.
Just
It's
like the Super Bowl.
Chris said it's
Yeah,
about
it's-
2 minutes long.
It's mesmerizing.
We should have had it on our report.
May I have
Steve had it.
Steve?
So I'm assuming they both agreed in writing that the coin flip
They
was.
did.
adequate. And I don't know if it's my realm to ask any questions on a topic like this, but.
Have at it.
And so that was my next question. I appreciate you bringing that up, Bill, that were they present? Normally, if, they want to be present to make sure that everything is.
They were given the opportunity, but the suppliers are based out of the Salt Lake City area. So
Sure.
we did a live stream, so I believe they were both on the live stream. So they saw it in real time. They could have come and witnessed it, I suppose, but
Sure. Yeah, and so I appreciate that. And just as a matter of fact, we had opened bids on a project last week, and we had a tie bidder.
I've never had it happen to me, but it happens.
How did you resolve it?
We had a bidder that was a low bidder. It was private work, so you have a little bit more liberties on private work. So one bidder was low on the base bid, and then there were two alternates that were accepted that created the tie. And it kind of came down to who could deliver the project, starts the soonest and deliver the project in the quickest amount of time, because it's a 3-month project. So, so that's what was our rationale.
Any further comments or discussions? I'd entertain a motion to approve this one.
I would move to approve.
Got Mary in the minutes. She's got a motion. Got a second? Second.
I want you to know I'm here.
Got a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, same sign. Motion is approved. I draw your attention, members, to the calendar of various meetings and conferences that are available to us over the next several months. And unless we have anything else to bring up. Doesn't look like it. I'd say we adjourn the meeting then.
Say you're right.
We are adjourned.